Hi guys and welcome to another video. Today I'll be listing top 10 scariest Pokemon. When determining Pokemon for this list, I took into account how scary do they look, but also how scary they are according to their Pokédex entries, and other lore about them. And just in general how scared I would be of this Pokemon if I lived in a Pokemon world. And I'm sure a lot of these Pokemon will make many of you who want to live in the Pokemon world rethink if that's actually such a good idea. And with that said, let's just get into the list. Number 10. Phantom. I'm sure a lot of you right now are thinking, what? Phantom? But it's such a cute Pokemon, why would you find it scary? Well, let's read this Pokemon some Pokédex entry. These Pokemon are stumps, possessed by the spirits of children who died in the forest. Their cries sound like eerie screams. What? This Pokédex entry makes me never be able to look at a Phantom the same way again. Well, I guess it's possible that it's false, because in the Pokédex in Pokemon Y and Alpha Sapphire it says according to old tales, these Pokemon are stumps possessed by the spirits of children who died while lost in the forest. According to old tales. So I guess it's possible that it's false and it's just old tales, and the Pokédex is known to be false many times before. But even though it's false, the Pokemon Sun X3 is still creepy as hell, and still makes me really scared. Number 9. Grimmsnarl. Grimmsnarl is basically the opposite of Phantom. It doesn't have any scary lore about it. Well, its pre-evolution Morgrem does, because according to its sword Pokédex entry, when it gets down on all fours, as if to beg for forgiveness, it's trying to lure opponents in, so that it can stab one with its spear-like hair. But Grimmsnarl itself doesn't have any scary lore about it, but it looks extremely scary. It looks like a boss from some video game that's much less child-friendly than Pokemon, or maybe like a monster from some horror film. And I know if I lived in a Pokemon world and I came across a wild Grimmsnarl, I would be scared as heck. Number 8. Frostlass. Most of Frostlass's Pokédex entries talk about the same things, and I think his Pokemon Moon Pokédex entry sums it up the best. The soul of a woman lost on a snowy mountain possessed an icicle, becoming this Pokemon. The food it most relishes is the souls of men. And it gets even worse when you think about it, because if you ever use a Frostlass on your team, you basically commanded that thing with a soul and probably memories of a human woman to do your bidding and battle for you. And also, if it has a soul of a human woman, and it is souls of men, most likely human men, then isn't that basically cannibalism? And when you read its Pokemon Ultra Sun Pokédex entry, it becomes even weirder. It freezes hikers who have come to climb snowy mountains and carries them back to its home. It only goes after men and things are handsome. So this entry makes it even weirder. It adds this sort of a perverted vibe, which I don't even want to think about. Number 7. Cofagrigus. In almost all its Pokédex entries, it talks about how if a grave robber comes close to a Cofagrigus, it traps it in its body. And now a lot of you are thinking, well, they're just grave robbers, they are bad people, maybe some of you even think they deserve it. But think about it. Cofagrigus is possessing a really old coffin, so it's quite possible that those grave robbers are actually archaeologists exploring old tombs. And also, Cofagrigus is possessing a coffin, as you can clearly tell. And presumably someone was buried in that coffin, and presumably that person's body is still inside there. So if you ever catch a Cofagrigus and put it on your team, you're basically constantly carrying around a corpse. Number 6. Litwick. Litwick seems like such a kind and innocent Pokemon. You can almost never imagine it actually hurting anybody, but that's completely false. Because according to almost all of its Pokédex entries, it pretends to be a guide, but actually steals the soul of anybody who follows it, and uses it to burn up its flame. And I find that so creepy. I find that a cute and innocent looking Pokemon that's pretending to be your friend and guide, but actually, burns up your soul, much creepier than just a really scary looking Pokemon that's going to attack you upon sight. But its Pokemon Sword entry takes it a step further. The flame on its head keeps its body slightly warm. This Pokemon takes lost children by the hand to guide them to the spirit world. And it's not just Pokemon Sword, Pokemon Shield too. the younger the life this Pokemon absorbs, the brighter and eerier the flame on its head burns. So, for a franchise whose main demographic is children, Pokemon sure has a thing for killing them in its Pokédex entries. Number 5. Spiritomb. In almost all of Spiritomb's Pokédex entries, it talks about how it's actually 108 different spirits bound to an old keystone. And in most of them, it's implied that all of the 108 spirits were actually evil, or at least mischievous. But in Pokemon Sword, it says exactly 108 spirits gathered to become this Pokemon. Apparently, there are some ill-natured spirits in the mix. So in this one, is basically said that most of the spirits that gathered to become Spiritomb were actually good spirits. Only some of them were actually ill-mannered. And what happens in Auras actually supports that Pokédex entry, because in a new Marvel you can catch a Spiritomb, and it's heavily implied that that Spiritomb came to be because in a new Marvel a lot of Pokemon were murdered to gather life energy, and probably 108 of them got somehow bound to an old keystone and become a Spiritomb. And it's very disturbing to think how 108 were probably more than 108, but a lot of Pokemon were murdered, and some of them got bound to an old keystone and became this Spiritomb you're now using on your team. But like that wasn't disturbing enough. I recently saw a video by Hoops and Hip Hop, in which he says that most likely in the original Sinnoh games, where you talk to the 32 people in the underground to get a Spiritomb, you're actually, killing them and collecting their souls to form a Spiritomb, because it probably wasn't complete yet and it missed 32 souls. And that disturbs me even more. Even though it's probably just a theory and not actually true, but it's still very disturbing. Number 4. Mimikyu. Even at first glance, Mimikyu looks pretty scary. But it gets really scary when you learn about its lore, because any person that looks under its robe dies. And that's not even something the Pokédex just said, and could be very well wrong, like some other Pokédex entries. It actually happens in the Pokemon anime. Well, somewhat. Meowth looks under Mimikyu's robe a few times, and every time, like in a child-friendly way, and it's implied that he's going to afterlife, but Jesse and James somehow call him back to life. And I know he didn't actually die, but Meowth is definitely a special case, because even though he's a Pokemon, he actually managed to learn human speech. And it could be very well true that if any other Pokemon or even a human look under Mimikyu's robe, they would actually die. And Mimikyu is actually pretty tragic too, because it only wants love and acceptance, and it doesn't actually want to hurt anybody. But because of its forms, the only way for it to actually get love is to pretend to be Pikachu, a Pokemon that's actually really popular even in the world of the Pokemon games and the anime. Number 3. Driftwood. Similar to Litwick, Driftwood is another cute Pokemon that's actually really scary. Because in most of its Pokédex entries, it's either implied or directly stated that Driftwood takes away any child that holds onto it and basically kills it. But its Ultra Sun entries takes it a step further. Its round body is stuffed with souls and expands each time it leads someone away. So, if you have any Driftwood in Pokemon Go, you know the one that is the biggest and has the most weight is the one that killed the most children. But that's not it. Because according to its Moon Pokédex entry, if for some reason its body bursts, its soul spills out with a screaming sound. What? This is a creature from a children's video game. Like, what the heck, Nintendo? Number 2. Darkrai. Darkrai inflicts anybody near it with horrific nightmares, and the only way to stop them is to get a lunar ring from Cresselia. And if you don't, you die. And that's not just from some Pokédex entries. It actually happens in the games. Twice. The first time it was in the Sinnoh games. There is a kid suffering from Darkrai inflicted nightmares, and you need to save him by getting him a lunar ring. And the second time it was in Black 2 and White 2. In this strange house, you meet a ghost of a girl who died because her parents couldn't get her the lunar ring in time, and now she haunts her old house. And I think that's very disturbing for Pokemon. Like, Darkrai might not be the scariest Pokemon, but it definitely has the scariest in-game storyline in any Pokemon game. Number 1. Baynet. Also, Bennett's Pokédex entries talk about how it was once a doll that got thrown out by the child that owned it, and it became a Pokemon because of the grudge of being thrown out, and is now seeking revenge against its former owner. And while most Pokemon on this list kill people, they usually either don't do it on purpose or do it in a more animalistic way. Like, they see a human, they want its soul, so they take it. But Bennett is actively planning a murder of a child. Well, most likely. We don't know what revenge means, but by the looks of it, it's probably killing that child. And I find that much creepier than any other Pokemon on this list. Well, Frostlass seems also pretty intelligent and is probably also doing it on purpose, but it looks much less scary. And also in some of Bennett's Pokédex entries, it talks about how Bennett lives in dark alleys. And can you imagine anything more scary than seeing a Bennett in an alley? And that's the list. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, maybe consider liking it, or maybe subscribing to my channel and ring the bell button, so you get notified when I upload another video. Also, leave me a comment telling me, do you agree with my list? Are there any other Pokemon you find really scary? And I think that's all I have to say for now. So I hope I'll see you again, and bye!